advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Belvidere Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted with the Star Ledger and express times and submitted to the town clerk of the town of Belvidere on January 16, 2022. This meeting will be live streamed at www.belvideresd.org.
Mr. Ackerman? Mr. Blum? Mrs. Costantino?
Here.
Dr. Zuppeth?
Here.
Mrs. Duckworth? Kennedy? Scott?
Here.
Mr. Roca?
Here.
Stefan?
Here.
Mr. Ty? Mrs. Weidlich?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Okay, committee reports. We haven't had any committees, but you want to do a status update?
Yeah, I'll speak for the administrative team. We're happy we got a little bit of a reprieve of committee meetings for a couple of weeks. In the meantime, since we last met, we had gone down to Atlantic City for a school board's workshop, and we'll talk a little bit more down the road. Shelley had attended, I know Mr. Blum did too, a couple of workshops specifically on referendums and bonds and talking about raising capital for projects. So Shelley, in the meantime, has also met with a few of the companies to just kind of keep that conversation going. So I thought it'd be appropriate for her to take a few minutes and just discuss kind of where we're at and what she's seen. And then, Mr. Blum, if there's anything you'd like to add to from those workshops, feel free.
So one of the workshops that Bob and I had gone to was from Tony Solomon, who's with Wilentz Attorneys, and he did a presentation on referendums and capital leases. And it was informative, but I think the best part was afterward, I spoke with him for a little while, and he really thought that we needed to get a financial advisor to start getting us rolling before we would actually need a bond attorney. And he introduced me to Robbie Akampora from Phoenix Advisors, and we met with her and then had a follow-up meeting last week with her as well as with Tony. And in that meeting, I was able to discuss some of our details. And it all relies upon what type of projects you're trying to do. So since we're looking right now at athletic-driven projects, they don't qualify for debt service aid. And you also can't do a capital lease on a track because they can't roll it back up and take it with them. So a capital lease would only be an option for the turf field and only for the actual turf, not for any of the site work. So that doesn't make that very viable for us. For a referendum, we still could do so. It would probably be over a 15-year life, and we have borrowing capacity of about $7.5 million, so more than enough that we would need. But again, the state aid for the debt service, even though we qualify for a higher percentage of it, the only thing that we could probably try to get debt service on would be a drainage, like some of the drainage site work for either project, but otherwise we wouldn't qualify. So that led us into more of a discussion about, you know, what our plans are going to be for 3rd Street and whether we do something to dispose of that building, utilize the building. We did a little more walk-arounds here in this school to see what type of spaces are available, what we can potentially clean out some classrooms or small spaces, doing some record retention, digitizing things, which I also got information on at school boards. So we have a lot to talk about and consider to see which direction we want to go in order to try to fund any of the field projects that we've been discussing or not.
Well, I believe that referendum because we have so thank you. Typically, you don't have the money to buy the house. So what do? You go out and borrow money. And you borrow that money at today's value. And then with the length of the mortgage, you're paying it back with such cheaper dollars. Financial, a concept known as leverage. So that could be to our benefit. So I would encourage us to look at what projects we have and consider a referendum.
From From a board perspective, I guess I'm just thinking about like the organization of all of this. Are we looking to talk I think it's bigger than just a finance meeting. So, I mean, do we need to plan a special meeting just on this topic while we're all here hashing out details? How do we want to move forward as a board? Because,
I think it's a great idea, personally. I think it'd be a fantastic idea, just to have a
Special meeting?
special meeting specifically on fields and upgrades to the facilities. I think when we do it in this setting, we tend to be looking to, with the rest of the agenda, more
well, yeah,
focused on that.
we're on the clock all the time.
Yep. So I think that if we did that, I think it'd be an outstanding idea, personally. But I would also recommend waiting until January, until the
Nowadays.
new board is set.
Right.
And I do have more specifics on, what it would actually cost, to borrow at $1 million multipliers or like $5 million, et cetera. So, and I have more detail that we can go into.
Are we still talking about like splitting it, going in steps, like knowing all different phases and then deciding if we want to go for the whole thing or we want to split it and,
We did get updated amounts for doing a track as well as doing like a natural grass field in the middle with some irrigation. We got updated prices on what they basically call like a lower level turf field. It's still around $1 million. They did come out though, do a site inspection, maybe it was, to actually look at our track, and they think that they're gonna be able to come back with some better numbers because we won't need as much site work since we do have some type of groundwork done. So I think once we get more of those specifics, it'll be a better conversation to see which direction to go. I mean, the economies of scale are definitely better to do both at the same time.
How does everybody feel about doing a special meeting in January?
Excellent idea.
Okay, so I'll send out some dates and we'll go from there.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? Just, Phil, if I understood what you were trying to say, or what I was trying to understand, they were looking at all our options. Now, one of our options could be to sell Third Street, so they were looking around this building or the other buildings to see if we had additional rooms we could possibly use. Is that what you were?
Well, I mean, to put the sale of Third Street on the table, we have to know that we have enough space.
Right, so that's what there was, so there's a possibility of additional classrooms that we could use in these buildings that are maybe being utilized for other things that would free up Third Street to possibly be sold. Is that what I was thinking I was hearing?
Potentially.
Okay.
That's
I'm not trying to concrete it down. I'm just saying that was
Yeah.
an avenue we could think about going. Okay.
definitely an avenue that we're looking at to see if it's doable.
Okay. The other question, field hockey is apparently an up-and-coming building sport, okay? So in my opinion, if you're looking at fields, you're probably gonna prioritize a field for a sport that's gaining ground, as opposed to, and I'm a football mom, don't get me wrong, as opposed to football that used to have freshman, varsity, and JV, and now we can hardly field a varsity team. Is there a way to get a handle on how many kids are in it opposed to how many kids were in it 5 years ago? You know what I'm trying to?
Yeah, I think we can do that. Actually, Ms. Kenny's not here tonight, but she had asked in an email she sent, I think that was the one she sent to you and I, Jen, about she wanted to look just specific at this year's activity numbers. I don't think it'd be too difficult to go back 5 years.
I
and
think
put
we
those
got to
numbers
compare
together.
it so we know
Yeah.
where we're going. If
Sure.
we've declined over the last 5 years, we're probably going to continue to decline. If we've grown over the last 5 years, that's probably a sport that the kids are interested in, and we're probably going to continue to grow. And I would just like to be able to base my decision on a priority list of up and coming as opposed to dying.
I'm just taking notes.
Thank you.
Anything else on that?
We'll look to have,
Fine.
we'll look to have that prepared for that whenever we figure out that
Mhm.
January meeting.
Okay. All right, motion to go into executive session
Motion.
for personnel and HIB.
Motion.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion to go into executive session for personnel committee updates and HIB. Any discussion held by the board which should not remain confidential will be made public as soon as practicable. Minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. The board will reconvene in public session at the conclusion of the closed section, hopefully in 15 minutes. Public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Belvidere Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted with the Star Ledger and Express Times and submitted to the town clerk of the town of Belvidere on January 16, 2022. The meeting will be live streamed at www.belvideresd.org. Oh, nope, mission statement. I always do that. Mission of the Belvedere School District is to celebrate our past and empower our future while focusing on the four cornerstones of our district: tradition, excellence, academics, and community. We strive to build confidence and promote collaboration. We encourage an equal partnership with our students and staff as well as community members. We empower everyone to develop the best versions of themselves. The Belvedere School District is committed to shaping students into global citizens who take initiative for their success and contribute to the continued excellence of the district. Our students are leaders in the decision-making process of their education and will be prepared to excel in a 21st century society. Roll call.
Mr. Ackerman? Mr. Blum?
Here.
Mrs. Cosentino? Here. Dr. Zuppeth?
Here.
Mrs. Duckworth? Kennedy? Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Soroka?
Here.
Stefan?
Here.
Mr. Ty? Mrs. Weidlich?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Now's the time for public participation. I think you're on. We can hear you. I heard that.
which is a big, which was a big accomplishment for us. And then moving forward, we're also planning our spring snowball dance in the first week of January. And then also, I'm representing NHS. Recently, we had our induction ceremony, and we've also had our Joel Stall Day drive, which was a huge success. And then moving forward, we're doing a leaf raking day with Leo Club. So that's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the update. Hey, other public participation. Okay. Correspondence? All right, superintendent's report.
Just want to comment, I officially feel old and Andrew Durr is a junior in high school.
I know.
So, nice job, Andrew. Thank you for the update. I have a few things to discuss tonight. I also will do, as I mentioned in my weekly update, I'll do some goals, just update on the goals. But first, I just want to remind everybody that this Friday, Saturday afternoon, and Sunday, or Saturday night, is our Belvidere High School play. It'll be the Christmas Carol. So if you have a chance, you want to come out. It's a little early for me for Christmas stuff, but I know Mr. Carabinus loves Christmas early. So come on out and see the play. Last Wednesday, we had our annual Veterans Day Assembly. I had the opportunity this year to speak, and I will just reiterate, it is one of those very proud moments as a superintendent that you get to see our students and the respect that they showed for our veterans, and also seeing some of our former students who are currently serving, and what they're giving and what they're dedicating for all of us. So it's just a great. Mr. Zetterstrom does an excellent job every year putting that together, and this year was certainly no exception. I want to just comment and thank Mr. Z for putting that together because it was an outstanding presentation. Quick reminder, early dismissals, next Wednesday is district-wide, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday specifically for the elementary school for conferences. I also had the pleasure on Monday night, as did Mr. Lee, of attending the Belvidere Town Council meeting. We were asked to go, Shelley and I met with Mr. Roth last week, or 2 weeks ago probably now, They were discussing putting fiber optics in the town. They had asked us to attend so we could see the presentation. Unfortunately, the company was a no-show, so Mr. Lee and I, we still decided to stay. We got to see the newly elected town council person, which was an interesting, just watching how that went down. Hadn't seen that before. So we're pretty sure that one of us, if not both, will go back to the next meeting to see that presentation on the fiber optics. Just a reminder, we have our winter sports starting very soon, so we know for sure we will definitely have a girls freshman basketball team, but we don't have the numbers for a boys freshman basketball team. Otherwise, everything is still running. Now, as far as my CSA goals, tonight I just want to talk a little bit about attendance and discipline. I asked the administrators to put together a list of just where we are compared to 21, 22 at this point. So it's interesting to see that for the high school, and this is for students, in 21, 22 at this point, or at the end of October, we had a 92.95% attendance rate. And at the end of September and October of 22, 23, we had a 92.95% attendance rate. So our attendance is exactly the same. So that's either good nor bad. For referrals, for discipline referrals, overall, at the same point last year, there was 106. This year, it's up to 185. And we talked about today in an administrative meeting that that's likely due to quite a bit of tightening up with the discipline policy. So kudos to the high school team for keeping track of all that. As far as Oxford Elementary, for the student attendance for 21, 22 at the same point in time, it's broken down a little bit different. Last year, September was 93.5. This year, September was 93.3. And October last year was 93.96. This year, it's 90.24, so very similar. Staff attendance for Oxford Street was, for September of last year, 93.75. This year, it's 96.73, so a nice improvement there. And then October 92.4 to this year's October 91.52. Mr. Karabinas also saw a similar increase in referrals. Last year at this point he had seen 47. This year it's up to 83. And again, it probably has to do with tracking down on the phones and all the other rules that we're enforcing. So they did comment that it's probably a bad thing to put in the goal that we'd have a lessening of referrals since we were going to enforce the rules. And then the last thing I just want to mention is with the conferences next week, Mr. Karabinas today in his faculty meeting asked the staff to review skills with the parents when they come in. So I just want to give a quick overview of just one grade math skills just to get an idea of what we'd be asking the parents to be looking at. So third grade math skills, this is what our third graders should come out with. They should be able to compare fractions. They should be able to understand multiplication division, relate multiplication division, know their multiplication division facts, know what a fraction is, solving problem involving time and elapsed time, measuring liquid, measuring area, and fraction equivalence. So that will be shared with parents when they come in. Those are what our linkage skills are looking at when we do our assessments. Had the pleasure of presenting to Mr. Karabinas' staff today on that. So we'll follow through with that. And then the last thing I have today is just to announce our Teachers of the Year for the 22-23 year. For Belvidere High School, our Educational Service Professional of the Year was Ms. Lauren Apgar, who is our OT. And our Teacher of the Year was Miss Amy Krasinski. So Coach K, congratulations to them. And then at the elementary school, we had as our Educational Services Person of the Year, we had Ms. Kelly Schreffler, who is one of our paraprofessionals. And our Teacher of the Year is our second grade teacher, Ms. Seuss again. So congratulations to those folks, well-deserved honor. And that's my report.
Congratulations. Any questions about the superintendent's report, comments? Okay, motion to approve policy items, numbers 1 through 12, I believe.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? I actually have a question. Number 1, I mean, we had Mr. Durr here, who just did a nice job. Are we looking to have somebody sit with us by next month?
Yes, need to discuss that with student council representative, and yeah, I think Mr. Durr would be a pretty good
I
representative to
agree.
the board after. Maybe we can, I know he's gonna be busy though,
Yeah.
starting in a couple of days with swimming, so maybe we'll find somebody that can come to the meetings, yes.
It's a really nice addition, I think. So I'm looking forward to that. Other policy comments, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Noes? Abstentions? Moving to personnel. Motion to approve personnel items, numbers 13 through 20.
Second.
All right, discussion. Question.
Is it through 20, Jen, or is it,
Night,
It should be 16B.
yeah.
where did I get 20? Oh, I moved, I didn't see education items. I need my colored highlighters. That helps me. All right, 1 to 16, and then there was an addendum, 16A and 16B. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Blum?
Yes.
Mrs. Costantino?
Yes.
Dr. Zeppeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Duckworth?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Mrs. Seroka?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Mrs. Weidlich?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Okay. Now moving to education. Motion to approve education items number 17 through 20.
Motion, second.
Discussion? Questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Noes? Abstentions? Moving right along to business. Motion to approve business items number 21 through 26, 7? 7,
moved.
27.
Second. Not first, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Noes? Abstentions?
I'll abstain on 25.
All right, moving to continuing business. I was wondering if we looked into updating, I think it was last meeting, Melissa, you mentioned something about updating the staff directory. Have we,
We did, I know Eric, sorry, Mr. Lee, shouldn't tell, but we did look into that, so that's something we're in progress with, correct?
okay, my other question was just, it was gonna be any progress on discussing a common 6 to 12 schedule. We just came out of instructional council. Just really, we discussed pretty much 2 topics today. The notes will be coming. Jess is really good at getting them out pretty fast, but since we're here, I figure we'd just talk about what those 2 topics were. And one was 8th grade visitation, and which seemed to go really, really well. That was yesterday, 8th grade orientation. And the 7th graders also attended, so it was a big, lot of kids, but it worked. It was really, from a parent perspective too. Heard really good things about it, and just talked about, how to make it even better next year. And the other topic we talked about was the pros and some cons about coming up with a common 6-12 schedule so that we can better use our staff, our numbers, just kind of maybe moving some things around to be able to not for financial purposes, not for cutting purposes. I just want to kind of say that publicly, okay? It's for the purpose of giving our kids the best we possibly can, especially in terms of giving them more opportunities and more electives. And that's where that conversation is kind of just begun, and we're going to meet about it again in January at Instructional Council.
Yeah, we plan to, for that January meeting, have a strong outline of what the schedule could look like for next year. And I thought the conversation was excellent tonight. Bringing different people into it, different points of views, different things that when, as an administrative team, we talked about it, we didn't see. So I think we got a lot of good parameters just in which to work with. So look forward to presenting that.
Any other continuing business?
Any update on feasibility study?
Not-
Gonna ask everyone.
You can ask every
No,
time, and I
that's
can
it.
give you the same answer. No,
It was no update at this
There
time. I
is
haven't got the email. I don't know what is happening, though.
yeah, no
It's-
update. I tried to, while I was down in Atlantic City for school boards convention, I tried to talk to a couple of folks that are generally in the know on those types of things, and it is radio silence from the Department of Ed on that, and nobody can figure out why.
Wow.
Yep.
Really killing us trying to make these decisions.
It's definitely was the typical Department of Ed hurry up and wait. You get this application in, and now it's been going on 5 months that we submitted, so.
Any other continuing business? All right, new business.
Just want to talk a little bit about, Mrs. Duckworth actually sent me an email this afternoon about, talking about some of the Warren County School Boards Association meetings. I went to, Harmony actually hosted the first meeting back in September, which was specific on school security, and I know Mrs. Duckworth and Mrs. Weidlich attended the one last week, so they can certainly comment on it. It's always encouraging to try to get folks to those Warren County School Boards meetings. I think the one last week was on ethics, if I recall the topic. The one on school safety was actually, it was timely in the sense of, now that we're back in school with almost no restrictions at all, let's remember where we were about 4 years ago with the time and effort we put into the school security. As a county, you don't hear this often a lot when it comes to Warren County on certain things, but we are truly in the forefront when it comes to school security and some of the measures we've taken as a county. I like to often credit Chief Riley for taking that initiative a few years ago. We think sometimes when we go down to school boards and we see what some of the other counties are trying to do, we've already done a lot of that. But the two gentlemen that presented were both from the Department of Ed, and it was a lot of good reminders on good practices on what school safety needs to be. And unfortunately, every now and then we seem to get reminders of what could happen, just this week with the University of Virginia. So it was, to me, it was just, my takeaway was time to go back, talk with the administrative team, just talk with the staff again about what is good school security. I will like to make one compliment if I could. I think our new security person, Mr. Mayhew, has done an excellent job. He's been an excellent addition to the staff. Really, it's a different feel when it comes to security around here. So I want to thank him. Obviously, thank Chief Scott too for bringing him to us. So I think we've done a great job getting ourselves kind of back to where we need to be with school security. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about the ethics one.
The only other thing that we actually have had the training or started developing a team, part of the new initiative coming towards us for school security is having a risk assessment team in-house, consisting of obviously school counselors, those sort of things, and having to develop that before the start of the next school year. So we did have a little bit of training at my job for that, and we did talk about key people who would be doing that, whether that be at our elementary or at our middle school level. So I thought that was very, very, it was actually really, really good, and more to come. But the one thing that blew my mind, and it's public knowledge, I guess, but not public knowledge. So you think, nothing's ever going to happen here. Talking about Lopakon, that happens to be where I work. And he said, here's something that's no longer classified information. After 9/11, one of the apartments within the town of Lopat was used by one of the terrorists to help funnel money through. You want to see a room full of 80-some people just go dead silent? That's what happened. So it is here. And that's one thing I think as professionals and that work with kids every day, we have to think about, that it could be here. And being vigilant is so important. And letting someone know if you see something that's out of a normal realm for a kid. Because unfortunately, internal threats are probably where that's going to come.
Do you guys want to comment on the one on the ethics from last week?
The biggest things I took away from that meeting last week was, actually before they got into the presentation, was the person from the department who talked about, they go through each department, but legislation coming up, they were asking that everybody keeps their eyes out for any information that's coming down for possible votes for removing some of the services. And
Especially
there's
mental health services.
Yeah, for mental health. And they were saying that it's in such distress right now, and that, you know, families are waiting 2 and 3 months to even get evaluations. And there was, I forget what the statistic was it 1,100 a month were getting just their first visits and stuff, but they're waiting so long. So Warren County is in desperate need of that, and their legislation is talking about maybe pulling some of that back, and we need more. So they are asking all the boards to keep an eye out for any information that comes, so we can give feedback and push them to not take it away, but the need for more, especially in counties like ours. And then the other thing was they mentioned that school boards has a base that we can get information on money that's available for us that is part of their services. And then there's, of course, other tiers that you have to pay for, but for grants. So if there's grants or certain needs that we need, like we're talking about facilities right now and what we're going to need, they say that you can put in for that to get information on ones that are out there, and that they have a whole set for that. And we do have some that's available that we already are paying for with our dues all the time. So we should utilize that while we're looking for these grants. And then the biggest topic, I mean, their whole presentation was not just on ethics as you would think, but it's on social media and how much problems in the past few years, and especially with the boom in social media pre-COVID, then especially exploding over COVID because of the lack of socialization, how you can, because you're a board member, you can be viewed so much differently on social media. And then a lot of schools were bringing up the facts that there's so much misinformation on social media, and what do you do with that? So their recommendation is, obviously don't comment if you can, because you'll just get attacked maybe. And then to bring it to your administration, bring it to your superintendent, so that if there's a lot of false information, then some of the schools actually have somebody who will go on and make a post saying, you know, this is really what's, you know, the situation right now, or none of this, please come or for more information, or list board meetings, something like that, to stop some of the misinformation out there.
And I think the biggest thing for me was people often preface, I'm speaking as a parent, I'm not speaking as a board member. In the eyes of school board, that's no longer a statement you should make. Once you are a seated board member, you are a board member. So you really need to watch how you make public comments, because even though you're saying, I'm only speaking as a parent, it's not viewed that way publicly, and the Ethics Commission has brought down some rulings that also say, that's not, that you might have made that statement, but you ill spoke against the board, and you really shouldn't ever do that in any way, shape, or form. That was a new one for me.
It's interesting you brought up the mental health piece in the legislation. The governor actually pulled some of that legislation off the table today.
Good.
Yeah, I just saw that this afternoon, that came off the table. So I think the governor reacted to a lot of concern that was raised, certainly by the education community. The second thing is, you mentioned misinformation. I actually had received an email Monday afternoon from a potential family looking to move into town that had heard the rumor that the Belvidere School District will close within the next 2 years. But to give that family credit, they reached out directly to me and said, we feel that we'd probably get a straight answer from you as the superintendent. And I gave them a very straight answer. I said, that is a false rumor. So I don't know where it comes from, but
Hear it a lot.
feel free to buy a house in town and send your kids here. We would love to have them. And then if I could just comment too about New Jersey school boards, the workshop this year. I thought it was, of course, we haven't had it in 3 years, but I thought it was one of the better workshops that I've attended. It was actually interesting between myself, Shelley, Mr. Karabinas. We kind of hit a lot of different things. You know, Mr. Karabinas and I started out on Monday. We went to one that was on a behavior workshop. It was actually run by a colleague that I worked with about 12 years ago when I was in Sparta. And it was a nice into the state and some of the services they can help provide us with. And I've reached out to him, and we're going to sit down and talk about that. But I will just comment real quick on what was my favorite workshop, which was taking the Disney customer service principles into schools. I shared some of it with the administrative team today. Excellent workshop. And that was just two of a bunch that we had all seen. So I thought it was great, well worth the time. I know it's not easy for everybody to get away for a couple of days, but if you can, in the future, get down there, I know I speak for myself, and I'm sure I'm speaking for Mr. Blum and Ms. Weidlich and Ms. Chalma and Mr. Kibben, so it was really worth the time.
Thank you. Any other new business? We did discuss a little bit, just in the last meeting about the election. We don't know exactly what's going on yet, but we are reaching out to Holly Mackey, because if you're hearing, who are the new members, honestly, we don't even know, because there's write-ins, and there was a tie for another spot, so we're reaching out. Shelley, you're going to reach out to her, right? To see where to go from there, because it's nothing that is in our policy. So we have to go with the Board of Elections and see where to go from there. I want to put that out there.
And the other thing that was, I just literally opened my phone because I just got the email. I'm sure you got the same email because it came to board presidents. But if your board election results are certified before Monday, probably not gonna happen here. The new board member training is available starting Monday. So they're actually asking newly elected board members to attend training before they're sworn in January. That just came today.
Okay, could you forward that to me, because I don't think I got it.
I can. I can.
Technically, we're in a write-in situation, so,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Any other new business? Second, public participation. Okay, motion to adjourn? Move. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.